So good to see you all. I'm just going to introduce my piece, and what I'm going to try and do is bring in as a kind of witness the IT industry itself. What I want to do is just to position, help us to see the kind of the nature of the game that we're playing and how it's arisen, how it's developed really during our lifetimes. So I'm Peter, as Andy kindly said, I'm from Loughborough University. I'm also working with, it's probably me, Lucy, just because I've done 30 years of lecturing doesn't mean that I've figured out how to do this. So I run a team in Loughborough University, also teach the MBA course at Loughborough, and I also teach globally for Manchester on the MBA course. And I'm going to call in as a kind of a witness the IT industry. Let me call them the tech industry, to try and give you a kind of, try and use that term. It's the digital world, it's the software world, it's what we used to call IT, but IT was something in the kind of the back room when I started out, and now it's become front and center of everybody's front room during say, my career, during one career. I'm going to bring them into the discussion, and so with that, maybe in terms of context, we see why it's a very unusual industry type, and why they are hungry for our attention. So that's where I'll start, and I'll try and just kind of position that. And I'm going to call that section Follow the Money, and I won't take long over it at all. But, and then I'm going to just talk about some of the effects of that industry and what's happening out here and who knows about it. And the way I'm going to start with that is I'm going to tell you that, well, they know about it. They know about it. They've been raising flags over what's happening among their user base for a number of years, and they've raised concerns. They basically said, we're providing content to the world in this kind of digital world, and it looks like that content is having some negative effects for some populations, particularly young people. And then I'm going to sort of bring in some of the other research that goes alongside that. Like recently, Jean Twenge in the United States, she's been featured a lot in the New York Times because she's been doing these population studies, whereby basically she's saying we have a teen mental health crisis. Now, the teen mental health crisis seems to track the adoption of smartphones. And we've had teen suicide crises before. For example, in the United States, there was a suicide crisis of teens pre-internet in the 1980s. But now we've got a global phenomenon. And saying that this is a global phenomenon. This is not one culture alone, but this is a global crisis, seems significant in her work. Then very briefly, and I promise we'll not take too long over it, but we'll have a look at Daniel Levitin and his work on neuroscience. It's something that I got involved in 2015 for the London Design Festival, just looking at how the neuroscience seems to be telling us some scary things about, not now, and when it comes to Daniel Levitin's section, not just teenagers, but actually all of us. So we'll have a look at that and we'll go through it fairly quickly. First of all, we're going to follow the money and just have a quick look at this IT industry itself, see what is its nature and why is it, in a sense, what is the game we're playing? Why do we find ourselves in this situation? And the key to that, again, in a kind of an MBA class, I'd be talking about network effects, which might sound boring, but basically is about this. So if you were a class of MBAs now, we'd get quite excited about this point, which is, but what we're talking about are network industries. Now, if I have a friend and my friend buys a Volkswagen and I buy a Ford, no problem. Everything is fine, I keep my friend. A network industry is where there's a kind of a functional benefit from being on a common platform. So if my friend is on Facebook, I want to be on Facebook. like a telephone network. Any social media platform is like this. So where your friends go, you go. Where your family goes, you go. In LinkedIn, where your potential employers go, or your work colleagues go, you go. This is what we call a networked industry, network effects. There's a lot of economics behind it. People get very excited about it. And it is consequential because it's basically saying that we must actually eliminate the competition. If you are Facebook, you must destroy the competition because you've got to have everybody on your platform for everybody else to come. Can you see the logic? You know, if everybody's got to, you know, everybody wants to find their friends on Facebook, then Facebook has got to destroy all other competitors. So we have a very unusual industry beginning to emerge now, because Volkswagen and Ford could coexist for decades, but Facebook has to destroy all others. See the logic? Come back to it if we need to. But basically, the whole world of digital, the whole world of tech is characterized by network effects. It means we have very unusual, very, 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 very hungry industries. Industries that want your time and attention. One of the most bizarre things, if you think about it, is kind of think about it as a business scholar, but you say, well, actually, the fastest developing consumer product ever in history is the mobile phone, the smartphone. That's the one with the fastest development curve, fastest adoption curve ever in history. But there are only 2 operating systems. You know, if you think about that, that's really weird, that you can fly the world, and as people come off the plane and turn on their phones, it's Android or it's iOS. What you get, where you get network effects, is you get colossal scale winners. And everybody else is out the game. Your BlackBerry, your old Nokia, Symbian, all that stuff is all gone. You get colossal firms of great hunger. Now, let me just add to this, because most of them, Apple is an honorable exception, most of them then make their money out of turning these networks into advertising. And it's quite interesting that as well, that actually what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you there and keep you there so that they can sell ads. Advertising, you know, it didn't seem that sexy in the 1990s, but what they've managed to do is turn it into these $100 billion industries. Here we see from Google's revenue, 279.8 billion. And of this is last year, 2022. Google's revenue is 279.8 billion, and of this, 224.47 billion is just advertising. So it's like the classified ads of old, but has been engineered to a new scale and a new thing. But advertising implies that they need to get you on the platform and keep you on. The longer you're on, the more ads they can roll. So can you see a kind of situation whereby, at least as I call them to the witness box, I can start to ask some questions and say, well, you're not actually then interested in the quality or the health of content, and you're actually going to be completely open-minded over what you will show on there, as long as it keeps people. Just to try and put to try and call them to the witness stand. And if we were to talk about TikTok, for example, by no means the biggest, by the way, by no means the biggest, but the average time spent on TikTok, 27.3 hours per month, it's by no means the biggest, but has become especially sticky for teenage users. So 27.3 hours per month, how much homework is that? How much not sleeping is that? You know, from their point of view, it's a success. You know, they've got this war with Instagram to win. They've got a war with Instagram to win. They want the advertising revenues, and they've got to find ways of keeping you on the platform. So I won't stay much longer, but that gives us kind of the nature of the game we're playing. And this is a really interesting slide. Always interests MBA classes, because here we're comparing firm valuations 2005 on the left as you look at, on the right-hand side, 2020. And basically, what you observe 2 things, and these are the points I'll leave you with before having a look at a bit more of the evidence, but observe 2 things. One, firm valuations globally have shifted exponentially upwards. And secondly, you see the chart, it's basically all gone blue. Blue means the tech industry. So, know the game we're in. These firms are the most valuable, the most well-funded firms we have ever seen on this earth. They have the money. They have built networks of colossal scale, global scale, the likes of which we've never seen before. If you thought Volkswagen was a great company, they're small by comparison. If you thought BMW was a great company, they're small. Unilever, whatever, Goldman Sachs, the tech firms are a new class of firm playing a new game, and that game is actually being run in our front rooms. That's how it's working. You saw the advertising revenue, 224 billion for just Google in just 1 year. So know the game we're in, and then say, well, actually, could this game be associated with any questions, any issues? Well, maybe it could, and for example, Facebook know it. This is the most notorious story in terms of their own research, but it's not the only one, and I don't want to be necessarily unfair on Facebook over any others. But Facebook's own research shows heightened body image concerns amongst some teenage users. For a certain population of youth, exposure to this content can be associated with diminished body image or body image concerns. This is a summary by Megan Moreno. And this story emerged in 2021 when Facebook's own research was leaked. And it brought Mark Zuckerberg himself to the table, and he said, if we're going to have an informed conversation about the effects of social media on young people, it's important to start with a full picture. We need the data, we need the research, the kind of picture that Louisa can paint in a few minutes. We need to do it properly. He's right, of course, but bear in mind that he's got one of the most well-funded organizations ever in human history behind him. You know, let's see the commitment, Mark, kind of, you know. Let's see you commit to that. So their research begins to come out. There are others. I mentioned Jean Twenge and so on, which I'll come on into a second. Instagram makes teen girls feel worse about their bodies, and they blame the platform for anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. This is an article from The Verge. What some of the Facebook evidence was showing was, I think one anecdote that I found very interesting was a teenage girl. It's not just girls, by the way, but they do feature more prominently in the data than boys, but it's not just girls. But a teenage girl's making a kind of an insight saying that she felt her classmates were her rivals. You know, like in the class, they were in class, and then online in the evenings, a rivalry had developed over who got the most hits, who had the most approvals, etc. So that's Facebook. Jean Twenge, this is the stuff in the New York Times that you can see has been featuring very heavily this year. The number of teens with clinical level depression doubled between 2011 and 2020. There's a full-blown mental health crisis among young people, and it was building long before the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, what she's saying is it's just weird how this stuff tracks smartphone adoption and goes global. Now, on the last kind of section with Daniel Levitin and neuroscience, in a way I'm making a more general point with his work. This is from a book called The Organized Mind. And Levitin's like a super genius, you know, too talented to be totally likable kind of person. You know, if you look at his CV, it's so annoying. You know, he's got a professor of neuroscience plus a session musician for some of the best bands in the world. Now that you're already getting a little bit annoyed, but he's you know, like super good, a great musician and a great neuroscientist. You know, like, maybe those nights out with my friends in Manchester wasn't such a good idea. But basically, Daniel Levitin is saying to us that actually, if you look at how the brain works, it's working very hard. when you're on the web, on a social media site, the brain is working very hard. It's got a lot to take in. And your brain is not just, in a sense, what you're conscious of. It's also, in a sense, filtering out what you're not conscious of. It's taking everything in, and it's working hard to sort of say, to provide you with focus such that you can take in some content. So it makes the point that Americans took in 5 times as much information in 2017 as 1987. The web has arisen, and this is a kind of cognitive burden, and it makes you tired. You probably noticed that. It makes you tired just to go onto a website and explore it. And the reason why this is doing this is the point at the bottom here, which is basically, in order to process information, you've got to use glucose up. So you go on the web, you're doing some work on the web, and you want a biscuit at the end of it. You're telling yourself what's happening. You go find your way to the kitchen. From the laptop to the kitchen is the most well-trod route in any household these days, because it makes you tired and you want some energy back. But basically, he's saying even worse when you multitask. Even worse when you multitask. If you've got that smartphone in your hand or next to you, you lose IQ points. It actually makes you less intelligent because your brain is expending energy on just not looking at the phone. So the neuroscience kind of begins to add into the picture. Basically, if I summarize Levitin very quickly, he's saying it makes you dumber. And multitasking is a myth. You don't do that. Multitasking doesn't work. If you think you're multitasking and you think that's high performance, actually all the studies show that people who unitask outperform you. They do more, and they do it better. Unitasking is the new big thing. Multitasking is fake, and it's horrible, and it doesn't work because your brain isn't good at it. It's spending energy swapping. Unitasking and taking breaks makes you more efficient. So from that, I've kind of all I've done is kind of try to set up a picture, I think. I'll share the slides with you and so on. There's a great Guardian article from 2015 by Daniel Levitin, which is why the modern world is bad for your brain. Just reading that one article is very useful. When we look at Owen's evidence, and I've met Owen, and Owen is great, realizing that I was spending almost my entire day on my phone watching random YouTube videos and aimlessly scrolling TikTok and Instagram prompted me to do something about it. It made me ask myself, why am I spending all this time online consuming other people's lives when I should be living my own? So I did what any 21st century teenager would do in this situation and immediately consulted Google. So to summarize and hand over to Louisa, what we've seen is the tech industry is an unusual phenomenon. It's arisen during my career, frankly. It's not that old, and it's a beast. It's the hungriest kind of commercial beast we've ever built on this planet. It's not Volkswagen, it's not Goldman Sachs, it's not those firms. This one is bigger and hungrier. And whilst that might be good or not good, worth knowing the game we're in, the research is already beginning to emerge in different positions, maybe not conclusive, but we see in Levitin's work, we see there are mechanisms in the brain that might make us susceptible to what's going on in the digital world.